Efficiency is overrated and often backfires. There's a quiet shift happening in how businesses and governments measure success. This shift means what looks like progress on paper can actually make your life more complicated. When systems prioritize speed and cost cutting, they sacrifice quality and long-term stability. You're directly affected because these decisions shape everything from your job security to the products you rely on daily. Understanding this trade-off uncovers why some efficient solutions cause more problems than they solve. The details reveal a pattern that's been ignored for far too long. By the way, this channel shares one bold insight like this every week. If this perspective is useful, consider subscribing. The obsession with efficiency in both business and government has become a defining feature of our era. It's not just a buzzword. It's the lens through which decisions are made and policies are justified. But here's the catch. Efficiency, when pursued as an end in itself, often blinds us to the bigger picture. Most people assume that if a process is more efficient, it automatically means better results. That's a fundamental misunderstanding. Efficiency measures inputs versus outputs in narrow terms: faster, cheaper, less waste. But it rarely accounts for quality, adaptability, or long-term resilience. This shift towards relentless efficiency is especially dangerous now because we're dealing with increasingly complex, interconnected problems that don't fit into neat, optimized boxes. Digging deeper, this efficiency-first mindset shifts power dramatically towards centralized authorities and large corporations. When systems optimize for speed and cost, they often consolidate control in fewer hands, using algorithms and automation to monitor, predict, and dictate behavior. This isn't just about cutting expenses. It's about controlling the flow of information, resources, and opportunities. The consequence? Individual autonomy and local decision-making get crushed under the weight of optimized protocols designed by distant executives or policymakers who rarely face the direct fallout of their choices. Moreover, the human cost is hidden but substantial. Jobs once valued for craftsmanship, creativity, or relational skills are replaced by mechanized roles focused on repetitive efficiency metrics. This erodes workplace satisfaction and community ties, increasing turnover and chronic dissatisfaction. It's not just a loss of jobs, it's a loss of meaning and identity connected to work. As people become cogs in hyper-efficient machines, mental health issues spike, but these are rarely factored into the efficiency calculus. Another overlooked implication is how efficiency drives fragility. Systems trimmed to their leanest form lose redundancy and slack, two critical buffers against shocks. We've seen this with supply chains during crises like the pandemic. Just-in-time delivery isn't just a cost-saving measure, it's a vulnerability amplifier. When one link breaks, the entire chain risks collapse. The same logic applies to digital infrastructure, healthcare, and even environmental management. Over-optimization means there's little margin for error or unexpected challenges, making society more brittle. Finally, efficiency as a dominant narrative shifts public discourse and policymaking toward short-term gains instead of systemic transformation. Politicians and business leaders tout quick wins, cutting budgets, speeding approvals, maximizing quarterly results, while ignoring deeper structural reforms that require time, investment, and uncertainty. This creates a feedback loop where incremental tweaks are favored over bold solutions, trapping us in a cycle of superficial fixes that ultimately exacerbate underlying problems. What's rarely discussed is how this obsession with efficiency entrenches inequality. When efficiency becomes the metric, investments flow towards systems and populations that already promise the highest returns, usually wealthier, urban, or well-connected groups. Marginalized communities get sidelined because their needs don't translate into immediate cost savings or productivity boosts. For example, infrastructure funding might prioritize highways over public transit, or digital upgrades might favor affluent neighborhoods with better internet access. This selective efficiency deepens social divides, making it harder for disadvantaged groups to catch up, reinforcing cycles of poverty and exclusion. This efficiency-driven concentration of resources also fuels monopolistic tendencies. Large corporations can absorb efficiency losses better than smaller competitors, who often lack the scale or capital to invest in costly automation or data analytics. As a result, market power increasingly consolidates into the hands of a few giants, who dictate terms to suppliers, workers, and consumers alike. The power imbalance stifles innovation and entrepreneurship, while also allowing dominant players to externalize hidden costs, like environmental damage or labor exploitation, that the efficiency metrics conveniently ignore. On a geopolitical level, countries that push efficiency aggressively in critical sectors like manufacturing, technology, and energy gain disproportionate leverage. But this comes at the expense of global resilience and stability. When entire industries cluster in a handful of nations optimized for low-cost, high-speed output, supply chains become strategic choke points, vulnerable to disruption or coercion. This vulnerability isn't hypothetical. It's already reshaping international relations, forcing governments to rethink alliances and supply dependencies, with national security increasingly tied to efficient yet fragile global networks. Lastly, the cultural consequences ripple beyond work and economy. Efficiency narrows the scope of what gets valued in education, arts, and public life. Schools emphasize standardized testing and measurable outcomes over curiosity and critical thinking. Artistic endeavors struggle for funding unless they generate quick, quantifiable returns. Civic engagement declines as participatory processes get streamlined or sidelined, eroding democratic deliberation. This shift toward efficiency reduces society's ability to imagine alternative futures or question dominant paradigms, locking us into a narrow vision of progress defined solely by speed and cost. What's critical to recognize next is how this efficiency obsession warps innovation itself. Instead of encouraging experimentation and risky breakthroughs, organizations funnel resources into incremental improvements that guarantee measurable efficiency gains. Radical, disruptive ideas are often sidelined because they're seen as too costly or slow to prove ROI. This stifles true progress, locking industries into a cycle of minor tweaks rather than transformative leaps. Over time, this creates technological and cultural stagnation, masked by the illusion of steady improvement. Then there's the environmental fallout rarely priced into these efficiency calculations. Systems optimized for maximum output with minimal input tend to externalize ecological damage onto communities and future generations. For instance, factories may cut costs by dumping waste or overusing resources, actions not captured in efficiency metrics but devastating in the long run. This disconnection incentivizes short-term profit over sustainability, accelerating climate degradation and resource depletion while hiding the true costs from consumers and policymakers alike. Efficiency's grip also reshapes personal behavior and social norms. When time is commodified as the ultimate scarce resource, people are pushed to maximize productivity in every facet of life, from how they shop and commute to how they socialize. This hyper-efficiency mindset infiltrates private spaces, eroding patience, spontaneity, and the capacity for rest. The pressure to optimize daily routines can lead to burnout and social atomization, undermining mental health and weakening community bonds that don't fit neatly into efficiency models. On a deeper level, this relentless drive for efficiency amplifies systemic biases embedded in algorithms and automation. Machines trained on historical data inherit and magnify existing inequalities under the guise of objective efficiency. For example, hiring algorithms might filter out candidates from marginalized backgrounds because they don't fit narrowly defined performance metrics. This mechanized bias perpetuates discrimination at scale, making it harder to dismantle structural inequities and producing feedback loops that entrench social hierarchies instead of leveling the playing field. Finally, the cultural fixation on efficiency reshapes how power is symbolically expressed and maintained. Efficiency becomes a language of legitimacy, a tool for justifying authority and silencing dissent. Those who question or resist efficiency-driven policies risk being labeled as inefficient, backward, or obstructive. This delegitimization marginalizes alternative voices and consolidates power within technocratic elites who define what counts as effective governance or management. The consequence is a narrowing of democratic space, where contestation is framed as a barrier to progress rather than a vital component of it. Efficiency-obsessed organizations risk sacrificing resilience and ethical considerations for short-term gains. When every decision is filtered through the lens